3 chilling stories, believed to be true, about terrifying situations where the police couldn't intervene effectively due to lack of evidence or clear criminal activity.
Story 1. The Silent Shadow.
In the fall of 2021, I moved into a rented townhouse in southern Illinois. It was my first time living alone, and even though I was 27, with a steady job managing inventory at a distribution center, I was nervous about the idea. I'd just gone through a rough breakup with my ex, Ethan, after 3 years together. The townhouse, tucked away in a quiet cul-de-sac off a rural highway, seemed like the perfect place to heal. The townhouse was part of a row of identical units, beige vinyl siding, neatly trimmed hedges, and mailboxes with family names stenciled on them. The neighborhood had that sterile suburban feel, mostly older folks, a few young families, and a lot of wind chimes. I didn't plan on getting to know anyone. After the emotional roller coaster of my breakup, I wanted solitude, to keep to myself and focus on rebuilding. The house was small but clean, with a cozy living room, a connected kitchen, a ground floor bedroom, and a tiny backyard enclosed by a wooden fence. The backyard had no grass, just decorative gravel that crunched underfoot. I liked the simplicity, but something about the place felt off. Maybe it was the oppressive silence, or the way the streetlights cast flickering shadows through my windows at night. Within the first week, I noticed a neighbor who stood out. He lived 3 doors down, a tall, heavy-set man, probably in his mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a blank stare. I never caught his name and didn't care to ask. What caught my attention was his odd habit. Every night, around 9 or 10 p.m., he'd stand outside his house. Sometimes he paced or smoked, but often he just stood there, staring at the street. The first time I saw him, I was pulling into my driveway after a late shift. My headlights caught his silhouette, standing motionless at the edge of his lawn. He didn't wave or smile, just stared, even when I looked back at him. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was probably just a night owl. But every night, there he was, like a statue. No phone, no fidgeting, just watching. I mentioned it to my mom during a phone call. "Maybe he's just eccentric," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. My best friend, Sarah, suggested he might have insomnia, but I couldn't shake the unease. There was something unnatural about his stillness, like he was always observing but never engaging. Things took a turn in mid-September. I worked night shifts, getting home around 10:30 p.m., exhausted and ready to crash. One night, after a quick shower and a bite to eat, I fell asleep around midnight. At exactly 2:37 a.m., I jolted awake to a strange sound, a metallic scraping, like something dragging across wood. I sat up in bed, heart racing. At first, I thought I dreamed it, but then it came again. A long, slow creak, like an old gate swinging open. My bedroom was on the ground floor, right next to a sliding glass door that led to the backyard. I froze, listening. Silence. Then, footsteps, soft, deliberate crunches on the gravel outside. These weren't animal sounds. Someone was out there. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, and crept out of bed. I didn't have a weapon, just a dull kitchen knife I kept in my nightstand for emergencies. It felt useless. I crouched by the window, pulling back a corner of the vertical blinds. The motion sensor light outside hadn't triggered, meaning whoever was there was either out of range or had found another way in. I dialed 911, whispering to the dispatcher about the noises and my address. They said officers were on their way. I stayed crouched in the dark, barely breathing. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through my front window. I opened the door to meet 2 officers. I explained the scraping, the footsteps, the exact time. One officer checked the backyard while the other asked questions. The officer returned, saying the gate was closed with no signs of tampering. They wrote a report, but brushed it off. "Probably a raccoon," one said, giving me a look that screamed, "You're wasting our time." I didn't argue. They left, and I didn't sleep that night, sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the glass door. The next morning, I checked the backyard myself. The sunlight made things less terrifying, but then I saw it. A flat stone, about the size of a paperback, wedged under the gate. It wasn't random. The gate had a heavy spring that snapped it shut automatically, but this stone was placed deliberately to keep it ajar. A chill ran down my spine. Someone wanted easy access. I tossed the stone away and called the police again, telling them about my find. They noted it in the report, but said there wasn't much they could do without evidence of a crime. I asked if they could check with neighbors or look for security cameras, especially from the strange guy's house. They refused, saying they couldn't investigate without a clear violation. I felt like I was losing my mind. 2 nights later, it got worse. At 2:14 a.m., I woke to the sound of the glass door's handle rattling. Gently at first, like someone testing it, then harder, as if trying to force it open. I sat up, heart pounding so loud I could hear it. I couldn't see anything through the blinds, but I felt it.
Story 2. The ringing from the past.
In 2020, I worked for a property preservation company in upstate New York. My job was to handle foreclosed homes, cataloging items, cleaning them out, securing them, and sometimes boarding up windows if there'd been vandalism. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I liked the quiet. Most of the time, I worked alone in houses that once belonged to someone, but were now empty shells, filled with dust and forgotten memories. In October, I was assigned to clean out a small house in a remote rural area of New York. The place was in a dying town. 1 gas station, half the businesses shuttered, and roads cracked with weeds pushing through. The house sat off a dirt road, surrounded by overgrown brush and dense woods on 3 sides. No neighbors, no sounds, just trees and silence. According to the file, the house had been foreclosed after its owner, an elderly woman, passed away. No heirs claimed it, and the utilities had been shut off for over a year. My task was to inventory any remaining items, clear them out, and winterize the property. I arrived on a Monday morning around 9 a.m., driving a small box truck loaded with my gear: a camera, flashlight, notebook, and some cardboard boxes. From the outside, the house looked intact, windows closed, door locked, roof fine, though weeds and vines had climbed up the porch. I had to shove the front door open. It was swollen in the frame from years of neglect. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and a faint musty smell. The furniture was faded, the decor outdated, like stepping into a time capsule. I started my routine, photographing each room to document its condition. The living room was cluttered with old furniture, lace curtains, a sagging couch, and some framed landscape paintings. It reminded me of my grandma's house, heavy with nostalgia, but somehow oppressive. The hallway had a strange smell, not rot, but a mix of mildew, dust, and something faintly metallic. There were 3 bedrooms. One was stripped bare, except for a sagging mattress on the floor. Another was a sewing room, with spools of thread scattered across a desk and an old sewing machine covered in dust. A corkboard on the wall was penned with dozens of newspaper clippings, all obituaries, local names, carefully cut out and arranged. It was odd, but I figured the old lady had a thing for collecting them. The master bedroom had a double bed, a wooden dresser, and an ancient rotary phone on the nightstand. It was off-white, yellowed with age, with a coiled cord that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. I paused, staring at it. I hadn't seen a phone like that in years. It felt out of place, like a relic from a world that no longer existed, especially since the phone line had been cut long ago. While photographing the bathroom, my work phone rang, startling me. I checked earlier and had no signal out here. No bars, nothing. The screen showed unknown caller. I answered, saying hello twice, but heard only a low crackling, like static. I hung up, chalking it up to a glitch, and got back to work. I moved to the living room, packing up small items, old books, dusty glassware, porcelain figurines, but an uneasy feeling crept in. I kept glancing toward the hallway, half expecting to see someone standing there. Then my phone rang again. Unknown caller again. I hesitated, then answered, stepping into the hallway for better reception. More static. After a few seconds, a faint whisper came through, so soft I could barely make it out. "Don't answer the phone in the bedroom." The line went dead. I froze, heart pounding. The house was dead silent. I checked the windows, all locked, no signs of forced entry. My first thought was a prank. Maybe a coworker was messing with me, but no one knew I was here this early,
and my phone still showed no signal. I tried calling my supervisor, but the call failed. The screen flickered, one bar, then nothing. I decided to finish the job quickly. I boxed up more items, but the whole time I felt watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind outside made me jump. The air felt heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. Then it happened. I was in the living room when a sound cut through the silence. A shrill, mechanical ring echoing from the master bedroom. It wasn't my phone. It was the rotary phone. The one that shouldn't work, the one with no connection. I stood rooted to the spot, my pulse racing. That phone was dead. No power, no line, nothing. Yet it rang, each chime sharp and relentless. I walked slowly down the hallway, my work phone clutched in my hand. The ringing continued, loud and insistent. I stopped at the bedroom doorway. The phone sat on the nightstand, its receiver trembling with each ring. I didn't dare pick it up. Part of me wanted to bolt, but I had a job to do. I still needed to check the basement to secure the property. The ringing stopped. I backed out, closing the door, my hands shaking. I almost skipped the basement, but pride, or maybe stubbornness, kept me there. I couldn't just walk away and admit I was scared. The basement door was in the kitchen, a creaky wooden thing with a rusted handle. I opened it, flicked on my flashlight, and descended the stairs. The air was thick with mold and a rusty metallic tang. Shelves lined the...
Story 3. Beneath the house.
In 2019, I moved into a rented house on the edge of a small town, about 15 minutes from the city center. I was 28, working as a night shift security guard at a nearby industrial park, and after years of living with roommates, I craved my own space. The house wasn't anything special, an old single story with creaky wooden floors, thin walls, and a tiny backyard with a few dead shrubs. It was cheap though, and came with a basement, which was rare for a rental in my price range. I planned to use it to store extra furniture, tools, and some boxes from my old place. The first 3 months were uneventful. The house had its quirks. Pipes rattled when I turned on the shower, one kitchen cabinet kept swinging open no matter how hard I shut it, and the streetlights outside cast weird shadows on the living room walls. But I didn't mind. I worked from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m., so I spent most of my time at home, eating, watching TV, or sleeping. I didn't have many friends in town, and I liked the quiet. The basement was the one thing I didn't like. Its door was in the hallway, next to the bathroom, a heavy wooden door that stuck when you opened it. The light switch was halfway down the stairs, so you had to walk a few steps in total darkness to reach it. The first time I went down there, right after moving in, I felt uneasy. Not scared, exactly, but like I shouldn't linger. The single bulb barely lit the corners, and the air smelled of old wood and damp earth. I stored my stuff, shut the door, and rarely went back. Things started getting weird in late October. I'd just gotten home from work around 3 a.m., exhausted and heading to the bathroom before bed. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks, evenly spaced, coming from behind the basement door. I froze, toothbrush in hand, straining to listen. Maybe I'd imagined it. Old houses make noises, pipes, settling floors. But then it came again. 3 distinct taps, like someone rapping their knuckles lightly on wood. I opened the bathroom door and stared down the hallway. The basement door was closed, nothing out of place. I stood there, holding my breath, waiting. Silence. I whispered to myself, "It's just the house," but I didn't believe it. I didn't open the door. Instead, I went to my bedroom, locked it, and turned on the TV to drown out the quiet. I stayed awake for 2 hours, listening for anything else, but nothing happened. The next morning, I checked the basement. I opened the door, walked down the dark stairs, and flicked on the light. Everything was as I'd left it. Boxes, old furniture, no footprints in the dust, no broken windows. I convinced myself it was a mouse or the house settling, and moved on. A few nights later, it happened again. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when a single, loud knock echoed from the basement door. Sharp, like someone had rapped their knuckles hard against the wood. I opened the bathroom door, heart racing. The basement door was still closed, the hallway silent. I stepped closer and pressed my ear to the wood. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, I heard it. A slow, steady breathing, like someone was standing on the other side, waiting. I backed away, my pulse hammering. I didn't dare open the door. Instead, I called my landlord, Gary, an older guy with a slow, gravelly voice. I told him something weird was going on in the basement, that maybe someone had gotten in. He sounded skeptical, but agreed to check it out the next morning. When he arrived, we went down together. He inspected the windows, walls, and foundation. Nothing was broken, no signs of animals or intruders. I didn't say much. I couldn't explain what I'd heard without sounding crazy. For a week, things were quiet. I started thinking I was just overtired from night shifts, imagining things. But one night, around 2 a.m., I was watching TV on the couch when I heard a new sound, not a knock, but a slow, grinding creak, like the basement door swinging open. I muted the TV and sat up, my heart in my throat. The creaking continued, the hinges groaning. I peeked down the hallway. The basement door was wide open, though I hadn't touched it in days. I grabbed a flashlight and approached, my hands shaking. I shined the light down the stairs. The basement was pitch black. The bulb wasn't on. I reached for the switch, but it did nothing. The bulb must have burned out. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, unmistakably human, coming up the stairs. I slammed the door shut, holding the handle tight. For a moment, I felt pressure from the other side, like something was pushing back. Then it stopped. I locked the door and called the police, telling them someone was in my basement. 2 officers arrived 10 minutes later, cleared the house, and checked the basement. They found nothing, no one hiding, no signs of forced entry, nothing disturbed. One officer even cracked a joke about me watching too many horror movies. I knew what I'd heard. After they left, I stood in the front yard, staring at the house, unwilling to go back inside right away. The next morning, I bought a heavy padlock and installed it on the basement door, not caring if the landlord approved. I needed to feel safe. For the next month, things were quiet. No knocks, no footsteps. I almost let myself relax, convincing myself it was all in my head, a product of stress and late nights. Then, one night, I got home from work